Hey everyone, it's Stephanie again, and you are tuned into the review of Married at First Sight, Season 14, Episode 7. Alright, before we get started, don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be the first to find out when I post these videos. Alright guys, I know I said my husband would be on this week, but life happens. He had to get called away to go do some business, so he will be on next week. He has a lot to say, you guys, because this season is a lot already. So he'll be on. For those who know him and miss him, for those who are excited to meet him, he will be on next week. And let's just get started. Last night's episode, it's too early to already be as exhausted with this episode or with this season as I am, but I am. I would say last night's episode's highlight was Pastor Cal. I love Pastor Cal. Pastor Cal is the GOAT of the experts for me, even though they all have their strong suits. But I love when he comes in and he gives them tools that they can use so that they can really foster development of their relationships and also overcome some of the things that they're struggling with. So I love seeing that. Let's kick it off with Jasmina and Michael. So this week they move into the homes together. They're all in the same little complex, cute little apartments. The reason they started doing that, even though it's cookie cutter, is several seasons ago, one of the husbands kicked the wife out because they were moving into either homes, and so they wanted them to have equal footing to not be able to kick each other out or say, this is my home, get out. So they do that. In that respect, I like that they do that. Let's be real, they're gonna move on after the 8 weeks into their homes or whatnot. So I think it works great. Pastor Cal visited everyone this week and gave them some tools. So Michael and Jasmina, listen, Jasmina's checked out. Jasmina has checked out really early. However, one of the things that she mentioned was what's happening off camera, or the way that Michael is expressing himself off camera. I don't know if it's like Michael said, her, because she's heard these things about how he can be if she just sees him through those lenses all the time, or if he is unable to see how he really is in the space when he gets upset, and so he's not able to recognize that he might be at a level 8 when he thinks it's a 4. Sometimes when you're in it, I'm not yelling. It's like, I'm aggressive, or I'm assertive, but I'm not yelling. Well, a lot of that often sounds the same. But at this point, I don't really know which is which, but Jasmina's checked out. I think she checked out during the honeymoon when they had that first argument, and I really don't know. Like, it's really too early to call it, but the feeling that I have about Jasmina and Michael is that they had something good. They had like the potential, and it could be ruined by this. And communication is really important. A lot of people say, yeah, communication is important in marriage, but really effective communication, like listening to your partner, and understanding what they're saying. What a good tool, and really understanding what your partner is saying, a good tool to use is to repeat back what you think they said. Because a lot of times we don't get it right. It's like, no, that's not what I said. No, that's not what I meant. That's what you heard. So we see them kind of visit his space, and I can't remember if they visited her space, but I think they did, but it was like quick. Listen, Michael bold-faced lied about living with a woman. They had these conversations where she said, yeah, I've lived with a man before. My roommate right now is male. And he says, no, I've never, this is like new territory. And not only does he have one female roommate, he has 2 female roommates, which Jasmina wouldn't have seen if this girl didn't just come out of the room and then go back in. It was like a bold-faced lie. Like, Michael, do you understand the question? Like, have you lived with a woman before? There is a difference between living with somebody that you're in a relationship with and then living with just two female roommates or female roommate, but nonetheless say, no, I've never lived with a woman that I'm in a relationship with, but my roommate is a woman. To just not to say it's new territory. I mean, he lied, and I don't understand why he lied, and I don't understand how he doesn't get it. So she's already feeling a way about his communication when they're in spaces that aren't so great, and now to have just such a very bold-faced lie that wouldn't have come out if she didn't happen to be there. It's like when people lie about stuff that they don't have to, then you start wondering, like, wait, what else are you lying about? Because this is something that you, like, I can't even make sense about this. This is not something where it's like, oh, I get why he lied. He shouldn't have lied, but I get why he lied. This is like something you didn't have to lie about. So I was really side-eyeing Michael. Like, he already doesn't have this most glowing, exciting personality, but I'm like, okay, maybe he's a nice guy, and we'll see, and he'll come out of his shell. He has a lot of trauma. Like, I'm giving him chances, but some of these misses that he's making, like, I don't understand it, and I get why she doesn't have much patience for him, because the space that gives us patience for our spouse is like that emotional connection that we have built up over time and experience. They don't have that. They met 2 weeks ago. They don't have that connection where it's going to give ample room for BS. So although she is checked out and there's some room for improvement on her end, for sure, because she shuts down, and clearly that probably has gotten in the way in other relationships. Michael, clearly his communication, there's some issues when he gets upset. He can be explosive. He can be condescending, which he admitted. So, that's not good. And he can also be, a little more assertive that leans into aggressive. That's a problem, because then people stop speaking to you. And they also stop listening to you because they just don't want to be bothered with that. What I loved about Pastor Cal in their dynamic was because it was getting escalated, and a good third party knows how to control the conversation. That's the point. If you guys are gonna sit and argue with me here, there's no point in me being here. So really learning to control the conversation while offering some tools is like best case scenario, and he does it really, really well. And I think he handled it really well with Michael, because Michael was on his way getting turned a little bit, and he cut the conversation and said, listen, and he gave him tools like, hey, don't speak at her. Like, she's not going to listen to you. That doesn't put you in a position to really express yourself, or her really even be able to listen to what you're saying, because you're speaking at her, and that's not how you speak to your wife. And I like that, although we could say Michael has most of the blame here, I like that he also held Jasmina accountable and saying, forgive him. If he says this, and if you do this and he corrects, forgive him. Because marriage is about a lot of forgiveness, and people automatically think that's cheating or stealing or beating. There's a lot of little nuances in relationships and marriages that can take you off track. And so it's important to stay in the space of forgiveness as long as the person is trying to do better and correcting their wrongs and leaving old behaviors alone, because that's truly how you move on. If you are going to hold on to everything, then just don't get married, and really don't have relationships, not only married relationships, but friendships as well, family dynamics, all that stuff. Like the dynamics, how you are some places is how you are most places. And so holding her accountable, because it's like, girl, you've been holding on to this thing from the honeymoon, and I get it, but you either decide to give him a chance to do better and move on, or you don't. And so now you're just building this brick. Like each incident is a brick, which eventually creates this wall, rather than we handle this brick together, we address these issues, we actually come up with things to course correct. Not just say, I'll get better. How? Let's course correct. And then we remove this brick, A lot of people end up doing that, and then you turn around and you guys aren't even talking after a couple of years, or you have no connectedness, because there's a lot of, accumulation of things versus really addressing them and putting them to bed. So she needs to do better at that too, whether it's with Michael or somebody else. That'll be something that she works on. So that's Michael and Jasmina. We shall see. But right now, last night, I don't have high hopes. I want it for them, but you know, they have to do the work to make sure that it happens well. Next, we have Steve and Noi. So here's the thing. Noi, I love Noi, okay? Nice, down to earth, fun, flexible for the most part. I really was annoyed with her I was annoyed with Noi this episode for a couple of things. The dog thing. Y'all know I'm not an animal person, so that alone, that would have been like an asterisk on my application if I ever did this. The fact that like it's obnoxiously, he has to sleep like on the pillow in between us. Like, girl, you know, just make some room for the adjustment of your spouse. And you see Steve kind of struggling to set a boundary there. And I get that people are connected to their pets and everything, but there has to be like, you're introducing someone else to the space. Like, your dog shouldn't come before your husband in the bed. Like, what? I was like, I wish he would have said more, but I see what he's doing. Like, he's trying not to offend her. He knows that she really loves her dog. He's trying to be flexible, but she's not trying to be flexible. And I guess that's what really annoyed me, because he was like, hey, can she have a dog, you know, a bed over here? And it's like, okay, that dog might need to sleep next to you, but I want to sleep next to you, not that whole thing. I don't think that's too much to ask. I think put the dog like on the other side, like, you know. So her lack of awareness of him clearly having a problem with that is annoying to me. And I think a part of her was probably testing him. I love this dog so much, so if you're my husband, then you kind of have to love this dog too. Sure, you can love the dog, but you can also say, hey, I want to be able to, I don't want to sleep in the middle or have the dog sleep in the middle. The bed already looked tight with just the two of them. So I was annoyed with her with that, because she was missing. Like, he's apprehensive, it's evident. Ask him, how does he feel about it? She doesn't care though, obviously. That's one. Two, the thing with the kids. I really, really loved Steve's very mature and very logical expectations in having children, and saying, let's kind of see where we're at and see the space that we're in with these kids, and then we decide if we wanted a third. I think that she is so immature with this. It has to be 3. I'm not budging on 3. Like, children are life-changing, and it's not just changing your life, or he or she is not just changing your life, it's changing the life of you and your spouse, and the amount of work that it takes. And it's incredibly immature of her to just say it's 3 and nothing else, without even taking in account just the nuances of parenthood and finances and anything, energy, all these things that he is saying that is so logical. And her perspective is that her cousins and her parents had 3 kids, and that's just her idea of the perfect family. Like, when Pastor Cal asked her that and she gave that answer, I was just like, that's not good enough to me. That is your reason why you absolutely have to have 3 kids, and you will not budge at all, because your cousins have 3 kids and your parents had 3 kids, and so this is your idea of a family. What? That's it, Noi? Like, that is the hill that you are gonna die on? Like, that is why you have to have 3 kids, not even taking into account all of the other, you may not want 3 kids. You might hit 2 and say, I'm good. And also just her perspective, and like, this is what my cousins had, this is what my parents had, this is what I had. You have to decide, as you have children or a child, that you want to have 1 more or 2 more, or what. It's 1 at a time, unless you have multiples. And it's just kind of immature. Immature is the word for the week for her, in terms of her perspective. I remember when I was pregnant with my son, and I was 3 months pregnant, and we went to some gala, something like that, and the lady next to me was like, are you gonna have another? And I was like, I'm still I'm still kind of having, like, lady, I'm 3 months pregnant with my first child. I don't know. I mean, it's not, I couldn't go based off of this is what needs to happen. It's like, we will decide as a couple, she's missing that. I don't know who she's having these kids with, but the person that you are not even really taking into account what they're feeling, what they're saying, that's the person that you have kids with. That's the person that you share the responsibility with. So she really annoyed me with that. I really didn't like the lack of flexibility with that. Because when you make decisions based off of like those surface things, that can be dangerous, because you can be making decisions that you're not equipped for or prepared for, because you have to have this picture. What I liked a lot about what Pastor Cal did with them is discussing the finances and having Noi talk to him. I would have pushed a little bit more, because she started crying and then she was still talking to Pastor Cal, and I would have just said, pretend I'm not here, and talk to him. She got emotional, and I get that, but part of that response is because of what they went through, the particulars of what they went through, and sharing that experience and what that was like. She never really got to it. She just said that it was really hard, but she didn't go into detail about the refugee camp and some of their experiences. And maybe more of that will come out in private conversations, but that wasn't touched on at all. And you could see Pastor Cal kind of saying, in your background and what you experienced and what you went through, kind of like prompting her to share that. So but I did like that he kind of directed her to share with him, because he doesn't know. You guys talked about, you're dead set on these 3 kids. You've talked about finances. We got to get into some of these other topics that are really important. In terms of Steve, listen, Steve, one of the things that he said that really irritated me was, in order to kind of get this traditional position, he would have to give up some of his dreams, or dreaming and creating. Steve, did they surprise you with this series? Did they surprise you by marrying you at first sight? Did you know before it was happening? Did you know when you filled out the application? Did you know anything? This is not the experiment for you then, because you not wanting to provide in a traditional way, or you want to just kind of like do whatever. Listen, you need to find someone who wants to be with someone like that and gain their love and trust and affection and their hand in marriage the old-fashioned way, where they already know your crap before they marry you, and then that way they don't have to be bothered with these surprises. She does not owe him this yet. Like, she doesn't owe him this belief in he'll make it happen. And listen, there are lots of people who do non-traditional things that make a lot of money. But have a plan, have something, because when you are talking about children, even if it is non-traditional, there is some stuff that's just going to have to be put into place. And for you to want to, drive around, the world and take a long trip, and I can make money if I want, and I don't want to give up these dreams and all of that, kind of putting someone in the space to have to deal with that no matter what, and you not wanting to change that, is selfish for this experiment. You need to be with someone who you could have given that perspective to in doses over time, and they could have had the opportunity to walk away if it's something that they didn't want, or they could have had the opportunity to stick around if that's something that they're comfortable with. So that annoyed me too, because I'm like, why would you do this show? Like, you shouldn't have been matched. And in a lot of ways, they are great together, and clearly they have an affinity for each other. But for someone who has such a uncomfortable and traumatic and inconsistent history with finances and life, in a lot of her formative years, why match him with like this free spirit who wants to do whatever, and who doesn't want to give that up? I don't think that's necessarily the best thing for this experience. Doesn't mean that he's not a great guy, doesn't mean that he can't command a certain amount. He has a career, he had a career, but I just didn't like that perspective. I'm not really sure if I'm willing to give that up. You shouldn't have done this show. So I don't know. We'll see how that we'll see how that works, the two of them, because there's a lot of good there. For me, they are probably the couple that feels the most real and has the most possibility of actually turning into something with longevity. But there needs to be some of the kinks work out, or some sort of agreements made before it could actually sustain a bunch of time. So that is Steve and Noi. Next we have Elijahwan and Katina. So Elijahwan and Katina, I'm still kind of riding the wave with Elijahwan and Katina. Here's the thing. I think that Elijahwan, if he had a good mentor, someone that he respected and that he trusted and that he would respond well to in their directives, I think long term he could be decent. I do. There's a lot of red flags with Elijahwan in terms of some of his tendencies that appear to be controlling and I wouldn't say manipulative, but controlling and playing games. I think it's because of who he is right now, because I definitely see the genuine desire to do better, but not knowing how to do better. And what made me feel this way is watching him and Pastor Cal and that interaction. He's kind of talking and yeah, I know. And he has this energy about him, and we know that he said he had ADHD, so we get that, and his energy in terms of almost not being able to control, being at a 10 a lot of the time. And when I saw his interaction with Pastor Cal was able to redirect some of those energies and redirect some of these things that he thought he knew and give him a perspective or give him a directive or some advice or feedback, and he would respond well to it. So you could tell that he respects him and respects what he's saying, and I think long-term mentorship would serve him well. Because we see a guy like Elijahwan and we just want to throw him away. Oh, he's a dog, let's just throw him away, he's not good for her. But a lot of people are just a manifestation of what they have seen and a lot of what they haven't seen. And so they piece together this picture of what they think it should be. And they just don't know better. And we have these expectations for them. And sometimes they do. But for the people who genuinely want better but don't know how to do better, we have these expectations for them where in adulthood they should just know. And a lot of adults are small children running around in adult bodies. And so I'm just looking at him if he had, some mentorship and really wanted to settle down and, jump into this type of life and have a marriage that is sustainable, he would have to learn that from somewhere, because I don't think he's seen it. And we're seeing that he is fighting what worked at a time. This playboy, loud personality that he could do whatever he wanted and it didn't matter, and he'd play around with that worked. That served himself at a particular time. It's just not going to work here. So I think that he really needs that, because I think he wants to do better. I do. Katina, she says she finds her voice, but I feel like I don't know what it is. I don't think she's really fully comfortable in expressing how she feels. She says in the past that she's let people kind of tell her what to do, and now she stands up for herself, and certain things happen that she didn't want to happen before, and so now she really sets boundaries. But I still see that part of her that might be apprehensive to set a boundary because she doesn't want to mess it up or she doesn't want to lose him, so she takes on more than she really wants to. So I was glad that Pastor Cal was directing questions at her and asking her if she feels valued, if she feels, certain things. Her apprehension and her responses lets me know that there's more there. So I think when they have their one-on-ones, and I think usually they have their one-on-ones towards the end of the season, but they should have one-on-ones early on and then later, so that they can really talk very freely about their experiences, and they can get directives like, hey, like, instead of letting it happen twice, let it happen once. And it doesn't always have to be, you better not. It just says, hey, this happened. I'm not comfortable with that. And in order for us to move forward, for me to be vulnerable, because he's like, yeah, let's be vulnerable. They're talking about sex and all of these things. You're not just going to tell me to be vulnerable. You have to prove that you're worthy of my vulnerability. And it happens by respecting this. If I say no, or I don't like this, respect that the first time. I shouldn't have to say it 2 or 3 times. So these are the type of coaching things that I think would be great for her. And I think it would be great for all the cast if they started at the beginning and then had like another one towards the end, so that it could kind of frame the 8 weeks better and give them like a better opportunity. They saw each other's places. That was cute. That was funny. But I really thought that it was impactful, that talk with Pastor Cal. I don't necessarily know that I would have pushed with sex for the two of them. And it's because I like that Pastor Cal got to the meat of like, no pun intended, got to the meat of, like his pulling back and how that might be making her feel, and her saying, yeah, it does make me feel that. Like, I think that's important to say, listen, I am attracted to you, I desire you. So I'm glad that he brought that up, because sometimes that can really change the possibility of a relationship, because then it fizzles out in terms of the physical chemistry. But I don't necessarily think he needs to push them to have sex, because from my perspective in seeing the two of them, that is like an easy thing to do as people and in their past. And so they're approaching it kind of apprehensively, so that they don't let that, skew their thoughts and feelings and color everything. And then now you're like too far gone and you wish you wouldn't have done it. I think they'll have sex when they're ready to have sex. So that's my 2 cents on Elijahwan and Katina. Next, we have Lindsey and Mark. Lindsey and Mark, I think they're 2-on-1 with Pastor Cal was really, really necessary for them to not fizzle out of this marriage very quickly. I don't necessarily know that they're going to stay together. My perspective on them now is that, I don't know, Lindsey seems like a problem. Not that Mark is perfect, but Lindsey seems like she is fulfilling all of the warnings that her friends and her family, her dad and her brother told them. Lindsey is not listening. She is not listening at all. She is the perfect example of when you say, oh, communication is important in a relationship, and somebody says, no, effective communication, because you can communicate it, but part of effective communication is not only like expressing truly how you're feeling in a way that your partner can understand that, but your partner also in actively listening, not listening to respond, but listening to understand. And it's evident that she's so wrapped up in her emotions and feeling hurt that she's not trying to listen to understand. And it takes Pastor Cal to say, hey, like, listen to what he is saying. Mark, they come back from the honeymoon, they have to move out of his apartment. Her apartment is very unique, and even though Mark had no business clowning her apartment, clearly her apartment is not somewhere where he will just fit right in, and it's a lot, and there's a lot out of his control, a lot that happened in the honeymoon, and clearly he's feeling away, and his grandmother isn't doing well, and he has his issues with his mom, and there's a lot, and she is somewhat overbearing. She's take charge in a way that she feels is helpful, but sometimes can be stressful, because people like to do the things they've been doing. And even though, yes, you're his wife, there isn't a slow integration. There is this warp speed, tornado, and he's asking for some space to process, to be, to feel, to think, to talk. And she's not understanding that. For her, that feels that he is shutting her out. And some of her behavior, as we've already discussed, is not pleasant, and learning to manage that and not, coloring that person as this is who they are, the totality of who they are, and trying to take pieces of that and balance all these things, is probably a lot. Like, most of us would never do the show because it's too much, right? In terms of like meeting someone you never know and having a life with them, most of us can't even do the show. So instead of like understanding, and when he finally gets the chance to express, with Pastor Cal kind of like navigating that ship, she is disrespectful. She's rude about it. She doesn't understand it. She's not really trying to hear it because she can only see her perspective. What I liked about that conversation is Pastor Cal like allowed the space for her to express how she feels and for him to express how he felt. And when she didn't get it, he was like, okay, girl, like, pause, listen to what he's saying. And even when she said, yeah, I get it, because he has all these things going on. No, it's you. Like, you're overwhelming him. You're suffocating him. Give him the space and some of the ways that you are. And I'm glad that she says, you're a lot. And a lot of people can see that and say, well, I may be a lot for him, but the person who's meant for me will deal with all of me. No, that's like a perspective. That's a recipe to be alone. There are some things that you have to do and amendments that you have to make in fitting your life with someone. It doesn't mean that you have to change and they have to change you, but part of your personality can be why people don't want to be around you, because it doesn't work with people. Like, if you want to be with someone and have a life with someone, then you have to learn how to do that dance together. And so saying, hey, you have to like this part of your personality is off-putting to people. That's something that you need to fix. Like, that's not a take me as I am or not, because what people are going to do is check the not box, like, bye. So I'm glad that they were able to have that discussion. I'm glad she was able to say, hey, when you shut down like this, it makes me feel like you don't want me, so that she can get the distinction that it's not necessarily I don't want you, if they have any chance to make this work. One other thing with Lindsey is that I really want her to work on, and one of the things that the season's already filmed, but anybody who's like her, one of the things that I would have noted in that conversation is her need to like almost finish his sentences and tell him how he's feeling, like she knows. And she did that on the honeymoon when he was talking about his past relationships and how his exes were never able to be there for him emotionally, and he needed to be that emotional support. And she like finished that sentence, like, instead of being present and listening, she like rattled off, well, you're somebody who needs to be needed, you're with your mom and your grandma. And then even with this last night on the couch, he's feeling this way because he's going through this and that. Girl, you are not the expert here, okay? Just listen, be a part of the experience with your spouse so you can understand them and listen to what they're saying and get to know them, not try to, figure them out or say that you know them. Because what's the prize? What is the prize? There is no prize. You guys are both navigating this thing together, and that is something that she really needs to work on. Not trying to figure it out and say, got it, like, I know how you feel, like, it doesn't matter. There's a lot to work on with the two of them. And he definitely has to do a better job with not shutting down and saying how he feels. He can only expect her to respond based on what she sees and what she knows. So if you're not talking about it, then she doesn't know. And then so she can't do better. And people who go inward, it's easier for us to do that. I'm one of those people. And so you have to practice being direct and saying how you feel, and it will take practice, but once you get into the rhythm of getting out of the discomfort of immediately going inward and practicing saying, this is how I feel, this is how you're making me feel, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, then it'll become something that, although you prefer going inward, it is easier to express yourself. So that's what I would suggest for Mark or anyone like him. All right, last but not least, but certainly least, Alyssa and Chris. Listen, Alyssa and Chris, I'm not going to spend too much time on them because we've given her way too much airtime. But Alyssa and Chris, the thing that I would have really wished is that Chris would have really told her about herself. And it didn't have to be nasty, but the way she sat up there with Pastor Cal and lied, and the way she's been lying this whole season about her experience and feeling disrespected, and came up with a bunch of reasons. I mean, out of thin air. It's literally like if I were to look up and just pull random stuff out of thin air. And the way she came up with so many reasons as to why she wasn't comfortable and she was disrespected and it wasn't a good fit. She doesn't have this man's phone number. She's never really talked to him. She barely films with him. She literally wanted to stick around for the experience of it all. Not the married part though. The experience of hanging around her newfound friends, the other couples. I don't know if she thought this was like sorority at first sight, but she is despicable. I can't say it enough. She is despicable. She is pathetic. And her character questions a lot. Her character questions a lot of this good person that she pretends to be, because you could have been a good person by saying, you know what, this guy is a great guy. This guy may not be for me, but I just don't want to, treat anyone badly, so I'm going to pull out. She didn't do that. And really, don't do this show if you think that if you get to the altar and you don't like what you see, you're not going to be married. That is called a first date. That is called a blind date. And that's what you need to be doing. And that don't treat them poorly if you don't like it either, but that is what you need to be doing. You don't need to be getting married at first sight and wasting people's times and opportunities. I'm so glad that Chris said, this is my decision day. I wish that he would have really said, because she's painted him to be this terrible person, and I wish that he would have just shared his experience of her, and what has happened. He didn't, and I wish Pastor Cal would have called her to the carpet. Pastor Cal, when he wants to, he will call you to the carpet, but sometimes he lets people slide. Alyssa's not the one to let slide. I really wish that he would have held her accountable in the things that he'd known, seen, heard. I really wish that Chris would have shared his experience. But I'm glad that at least he, he said, this is my decision day, and he's out, and he didn't pull himself through that. He still was nicer than me. He handed her phone. As far as I'm concerned, it wouldn't have been me giving you your phone. I wouldn't have done anything beyond that, but that just shows the type of person he is. I truly believe that he will find his match because of being on this show. And sometimes life's sourest experiences are the bridge to where we're supposed to be, and a really great experience. And I think that he will find that. So that's pretty much it, you guys. Let me know what you thought. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you guys next week. Everyone have a wonderful week.